Welcome back to 3 games in and it feels like a crisis. We're back, baby. Mikel Merino out in the first training session, Rice suspended, and now Martin Ødegaard, although not confirmed at time of recording, almost certainly out of the North London derby and rumoured to be out until the next international break. Yay, I love supporting this football club for fun. The first thing to say is this is very, very annoying. It is very, very annoying we don't have our first choice midfield available for such huge games coming up. Sorry to state the obvious. Part of being a football fan is, of course, going through the ups and downs of the story of the season, but this is a particularly frustrating corner for me, as it feels like we were just getting going and the start of seasons is so important. But I've moped enough the last few days, and I'm ready to talk solutions. So if you're ready to hear them, let's do it. I want to talk Ødegaard and big players and how we replace them more generally, but first, let's just talk about this weekend, with no Rice, Merino, or Ødegaard. Yikes. I'm going to split this up into what I think Arteta will do and what I want. But considering Arteta has a UEFA Pro license and I've never coached a game in my life, you decide who you want to listen to. Arteta will defer to seniority and experience. It's just who he is as a manager, I think. You can look at his youth integration record, his inclusion of Holding, Elneny and Cedric late into his tenure, his historical lineups. It's just who he is, mate. It's just who he is. I think we all know Arteta's idea before the Ødegaard injury was probably Havertz, Ødegaard, Partey, and it's now almost certainly a double pivot of Jorginho and Partey with the latter on the slant, or maybe Partey, Havertz, Trossard if he's feeling extra spicy this week. And I get it. I'm with him 95 times out of 100. Go with what you know, increase the controllables, lean out of the chaos of a football match where there's so much up for debate. But is maximum control and experience always the right way? Sometimes I wonder if we're a little bit predictable in terms of our personnel selection over wider samples. It feels like we find ways to surprise teams tactically, build up differently, attack different spaces, address their weaknesses. But how often do we surprise with a more left field personnel inclusion? And for me, this is the perfect opportunity to do something the opposition won't have prepped for. When you're down, sometimes your biggest strength is the element of surprise. It's not about doing something for the sake of it, of course, but we saw in the same fixture last season how many men Spurs commit to go hunting against us high up the pitch, and the joy we had on the transition against them because of that. I don't think that will change either, because that's just the way they play, mate. Last one, I promise. Romero and Van der Ven jump and they struggle to defend the wide areas when their fullbacks go roaming. So, why not do something like this and catch them out? Partey deep for those quick progressive balls and a rapid front three looking to exploit spaces out wide. They won't have prepped for Martinelli central. Havertz a little bit deeper with Trossard in the pocket, and out of possession, it would look something like this. Obviously, this team has flaws, namely getting transition through and the inexperience in the press, but if you can create a perfect team without mentioning players who are unavailable to Arsenal this weekend, then be my guest. Regardless, we are going to have to get more comfortable adapting, not having all the field tilt, not having all the possession, playing in our own box and transitioning at times. Arteta has done it before, most notably at the Etihad. We need to win in any context, but this is a particularly tough one. And on that, there is a point about adaptation more widely I want to make before we get onto the specifics of replacing Ødegaard more long-term. Arsenal had 4 men's players nominated for the Ballon d'Or in 2024. Rice, Saliba, Ødegaard and Saka. It's hard to compare the Ballon d'Or across eras because they've changed how it works about 43 times, but I went down a rabbit hole and for the Premier League era, there's been only 3 times over 30 plus years where Arsenal had 4 Ballon d'Or nominees or more. One was in 2007 and the other was in 2003, and both were when there was 50 nominees, when now there's only 30. And no, we're not having the conversation about how football's got worse. Stop typing. I think we forget we're in quite a unique scenario historically. We have some of the best assets in world football in our squad for the first time in 20 years. And because of that time interval, it feels like we've almost slightly forgotten what it's like to have a group of world-class players. A lot of the frustration around the Ødegaard injury is squad depth-based. Yet again, we've left ourselves short and we're in a situation where through our stupid planning, we don't have someone who can come in and cover for or replace Ødegaard like for like. So we don't fall over when he's out. Same with Saka, no backup. And Saliba, who's his backup. Same old Arsenal yet again. Why do we do this over and over? But here's the reality. We have some of the best assets in world football, one of whom is Ødegaard. Those assets, therefore, can't be replaced like for like, by definition. You can't have both one of the best midfielders in the world and an easy way to bring most of what he does to the team off the bench from a player who's happy to be there. If you're there saying this is all Edu's fault, it's our terrible squad building, the logic isn't logicking. Ødegaard leads our off-ball work, knows our triggers to press, controls transitions, drops out the block to thread either needle passes in behind, captains us, can perfectly support the dynamics with White and Saka on the right, can run for 90 minutes, can drop into receive and build up, and more, all at a title-challenging quality and experience level. He is the coach on the pitch. That is not replaceable, like for like. This isn't Walcott for Chamberlain anymore, or Monreal for Gibbs, great as those players were in their own ways. He's too good. His role too specific in the modern game and in this team. And I think even attempting to drop someone in there and just go, do his job, feels borderline deluded. We know the issues City have had replacing Rodri. We know Liverpool struggle without Salah. So why do we expect our Ballon d'Or nominated assets to be replaceable? We bemoan losing Fabio Vieira. Maybe he could have done it. But as pointed out by Tom Canton of Football London, in the 4 games Ødegaard missed last year, Vieira didn't start any of them. He had moments in his first year, but most of his time at Arsenal, he was out on the wide right, or he was at left 8. Similarly, Emile Smith-Rowe. For me in that conversation, you're weighing up £30 million in transfer fees for a player with about 40 minutes in 2 years versus having a safety net in this situation. But some would say that Emile could have been a part in helping us out here. Maybe, but I don't think Arteta thinks so. The last game against the top 6 club Emile Smith-Rowe started, the 23rd of April 2022, left wing in the 3-1 win versus Man United. And the last one he started in midfield, the 22nd of August 2021, the game where everyone had COVID against Chelsea at home. Smith-Rowe is a brilliant player in his own right, but clearly towards the end, Mikel Arteta never really trusted him against the biggest teams. I don't think there's a guarantee that if this situation happened and they were still around, either of them would get minutes or starts, which tells us, unfortunately, everything we need to know. So directly replacing Ødegaard is never the question, and I seriously push back on it, as you can tell. So it's about how we adapt around him. What do we lose, and what are we trying to get back? With Saka, Havertz, Calafiori, Sterling, Timber, Nwaneri, and so on, there is, though, a way through. Off the ball, Arteta hasn't moved out of the 4-4-2 mid-block and situational, zonal, or man-for-man press with a few small tweaks in years, and I can't see him doing that. So for me, it makes the most sense for Kai Havertz to step up in this aspect. We tend to angle our press to the right, their left, and I would move Kai to Ødegaard's role out of possession wherever he's playing. He's intelligent, he's usually in that first line alongside Martin anyways, and I think he provides the smoothest transition in terms of knowing when to jump and being able to keep up that intensity and rhythm of press without moving others around too much. Putting a Martinelli or something in there just feels like chaos for those trying to track movements ahead of them, as it would be unfamiliar. Kai's also massive with those long strides and understands how to curb his runs well, as we see when he goes after the keeper. He'd definitely be able to physically work it, and he might have the pace edge on Martin Ødegaard as well. In possession, I'd be keen to see Saka coming inside more to access those half spaces Martin does so well. I don't know if we'll start him there due to the running, and I think Mikel won't change from wanting 2 players high and wide when Arsenal are moving through the thirds, as it's crucial to stretch teams horizontally, but it's very possible that who is occupying those spaces might now be adapted. I can see a world where, in possession, Ben White is pushed on and Thomas Partey adapts and cheats to the right to allow Saka to occupy these sorts of areas. Saka has the ball retention quality, the escaping tight areas stuff, the left foot, the ability to quickly combine inside in the final third, and if Partey's deep against Spurs, he can definitely come and be the wall pass. In terms of controlling tempo, we haven't really seen Martin do that massively in these opening few games, with Mikel tending to push his 8s a little bit higher at the moment, but in terms of tempo, Jury and Timber could be huge either from fullback or even from midfield, where Mikel has admitted he could play. Give him more touches, let him face play like Martin does, and I'm interested. He's so comfortable anywhere, receiving from any angle, and we saw how able he was to receive between the lines against Brighton, with Partey dropping out. If Timber is encouraged to do so, he can be a combiner and carrier on the interior on the left, who also drops out, mirroring what Ødegaard does on the right. He might even be put on the right. Now we're really moving towards tear up the rulebook stuff, which I like, but I'm not sure Arteta would be too much of a fan of. Arsenal love that attract to the right, work through it, switch to the left, or access the box inside. But we may, instead, be able to do something like this. Calafiori, Timber, and Trossard in that wide triangle on the left. Heavy attraction, great technical quality and ball retention, less running power, but with Calafiori deeper, a couple of switches out to Saka, who may now be on the underloaded side, could really kill teams if we can get him isolated. Instead of trying to work those dynamics on the right a different way, you simply change sides, and the 6 commits to supporting on the left instead. Could that work? I would be keen to see it, and it feels like a change that Arteta might make instead of, say, a strike partnership, which I can never see him doing. Ethan Nwaneri can help for sure. In terms of the ball retention Martin offers on that right-hand side, Ethan has some of that, some of the physicality and shielding. I don't know if I'd love him as our right 8, even with some adaptations and taking some responsibility away. It just feels like too much. But in certain game states, I can see us adding a body to the attack with him and playing things a little bit more freely, allowing him to come alive, perhaps as a substitute. Finally, in my view, Ødegaard gives us this controlling attitude to the team. He almost never gives the ball away. He's secure, he's rhythmic, and he helps us break down blocks superbly. If we're aiming to squeeze the pitch all the time, I just feel like we'll feel we're -1 without him. So just from an approach perspective, I'd like to see us adapt our attitude slightly. Can we be a bit more horizontal in build-up, a bit more patient, before attacking a space in behind quickly or taking a shot from distance? We may have to sacrifice a bit of control to pack more punches, because trying to lean out of the chaos of matches at the same level without him, in my view, won't work. This all feels a little bit weird, doesn't it? But that's because I think this is a relatively novel situation for the Arteta project. I know it may not feel like it, but when compared to other top clubs, we do actually have a pretty good record when it comes to injuries to our key players. Obviously, there are flashpoints, the Saliba and Tomiyasu day of death, Timber's ACL, Jesus, but if you look at the whole picture, especially relative to some others, Arsenal have a decent record with Saka, Rice, Ødegaard up to now, Gabriel, Raya, Havertz, and so on. And I say good record because it's not good luck. Not entirely, anyway. It's something Arteta was keen to address when he came in. Fitness is improved, the recovery's improved, the sessions are reported to be intense but purposefully more short as opposed to under Wenger. It's easy in these situations to throw our toys out the pram and say, why us? But I think actually relatively, things have got better, especially in the last few years. The problem is the pillars of our team are now really, really good players. And our natural desire from yesteryear is to look to the market and think, why didn't we do that? Why didn't we do this? Why didn't we do Eze? Why didn't we do Doué? But you can't just sign £60 million assets to go and sit on the bench and wait for Ødegaard to pull up. We can't. No one else does as much as we might think they do. And anyone really well run isn't doing that. The answer to this, even if we could go to the market, isn't there. We do have the internal answers. I just hope Arteta shows us something creative, something brave. And with a bit of luck, we'll be all right. Slowly, Rice, Marino and Ødegaard will be back before we know it. I just pray it's not before too long, mate. If you like The Different Knock, you can support us on Patreon monthly, or you can buy us a coffee.